The moment she said, "You don't need that anyway," something inside me snapped. It wasn't just about the trailer. It was about everything that came before it, the years of being talked down to. The fake smiles, the little digs that built up like cracks in a glass heart. I remember standing there, hands trembling, staring at my sister-in-law Megan as she backed my late husband's trailer out of my driveway. That trailer wasn't just metal and wheels to me. It was our last memory together. My husband, Tom, and I had spent our last summer fixing that trailer up, painting it white with blue stripes, planning the road trips we'd never get to take. When he passed away, that trailer became my sanctuary, a quiet reminder that love could survive even when the person didn't. But to Megan, it was junk taking up space. She said she was helping me, helping by taking away the one thing I had left of him. When I tried to stop her, she smiled, that cold, patronizing smile that said she'd already won. "Come on, Diane," she said lightly. "You don't even drive anymore. You don't need that." Her words hit harder than any slap could. I remember the sound of the engine starting, the crunch of gravel under the tires as she pulled away my trailer, my memories disappearing down the road. And as the dust settled, I made myself a quiet promise. She might think I'm weak. She might think I'll just sit here and cry. But she's about to learn that some people don't shout when they're angry. Some people plan. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the empty spot in the driveway. Every flicker of a passing car made my heart jump. I half expected her to bring it back, to realize what she'd done. But deep down, I knew Megan never apologized, not when she was right, not even when she was wrong. She'd always been the type who needed control. After Tom's death, she'd started visiting to help me manage things. But little by little, she started deciding for me. What I should eat, who I should talk to, what I should sell, and now, what I shouldn't keep. She treated me like some fragile old widow who couldn't think straight. What she didn't know was that I'd been paying attention to everything. I knew where she hid her secrets, how she lied to her husband, how she dipped into family funds she thought no one noticed. Oh, I noticed. I just never said a word. But now, with Tom's trailer gone, the silence in my heart turned into something sharper, cold, focused. 2 days later, Megan came by again as if nothing happened. She waltzed into my kitchen smelling like perfume and entitlement. "Morning, Diane," she chirped. "Did you get my text?" I took the trailer to a friend who might be interested in buying it. "You'll thank me later." I turned slowly, setting my teacup down. "Megan," I said softly, "you had no right." Her eyes rolled before her lips even moved. "Oh, come on. Don't be dramatic. It was just sitting there collecting dust. You said yourself you didn't know what to do with it." I looked her dead in the eye. I said I was thinking about what to do with it. Her smirk faltered for a second, just a second. Then she shrugged. "Well, it's done now. Besides, you don't need that thing. You've got memories, right? That's what matters." She turned toward the door like she always did, walking away before I could answer. But this time, I didn't stop her. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just whispered to myself, "Check the glove compartment, Megan." She didn't hear me. But soon, she would. The next morning, I made some calls. Quiet ones. Tom used to say, if you ever need to find out the truth, start with the paperwork. That trailer wasn't just sentimental. It was valuable. Tom had upgraded it, new electricals, restored vintage parts, everything. It was worth more than Megan's fancy SUV. But that wasn't the real secret. The real secret was what Tom had hidden inside something I only discovered after his death, a letter. And not just any letter, one that detailed every asset, every investment, and a few things he hadn't told anyone, not even his own sister. He'd tucked it away inside the glove compartment right under the registration papers. I'd read it once, and then I'd placed it back, locking it safely. So when Megan took that trailer, she didn't just steal my memories. She took something that could change everything. For the first time in months, I smiled. Because while she thought she was clever, she had no idea that she'd just walked straight into the lesson she deserved. And that's when I knew I wouldn't need to shout. I wouldn't even need to chase her. All I had to do was wait. The morning after Megan took my trailer, the house felt emptier than ever. Not because something was gone, but because something inside me had changed. For the first time since Tom died, I didn't feel broken. I felt awake. You see, grief has a strange way of numbing you. For months, I'd been walking through my days like a ghost doing what people expected, nodding politely, surviving on coffee and old memories. But now I had a purpose. And that purpose had Megan's name written all over it. I started small. I didn't want to draw attention, not yet. So I called Tom's old friend Harry, who used to work at the DMV. Harry was one of those quiet, dependable men who never forgot a favor. "Harry," I said, keeping my voice calm, "you remember that old trailer Tom and I had?" He chuckled. "The one he loved more than his pickup?" "Of course. Well," I continued, "it's been misplaced. Megan took it, and I think she might try to sell it. I just need to know if the registration's still active." There was a pause on the line, then a low whistle. "Diane, that trailer's not registered under your name anymore." My heart dropped. "What do you mean?" "She transferred ownership 2 days ago, to someone named Cliff Reynolds. You know him?" I didn't, but I recognized the pattern. Megan never got her hands dirty, she always used someone else. "Thanks, Harry," I said softly. That's all I needed to know. When I hung up, my hands were shaking not from fear, but from the cold thrill of confirmation. She'd gone behind my back, forged paperwork, and tried to erase me from my own life. But what she didn't realize was that Tom had trusted me with everything, including the one thing she could never touch, the truth. That night, I unlocked the small safe behind the old dresser. Inside were a few keepsakes, our wedding rings, a faded photograph of Tom fixing the trailer, and a copy of his will. My heart tightened as I pulled out the second envelope, the one with Tom's handwriting. I opened it carefully, the paper yellowed from time and tears. If you're reading this, it means I'm not around anymore. But I want you to remember something. Die, you're stronger than they think. That trailer holds more than our memories. Inside the glove compartment, you'll find everything you'll ever need if the world turns against you. Don't show it to anyone unless you must. You'll know when it's time. The words hit differently now. When he wrote, "The world turns against you," he probably meant life, loneliness, grief. But it turned out he'd been right. It wasn't the world I had to fear. It was family. I smiled faintly, whispering to the letter, "Well, Tom, I think it's time." The next afternoon, I decided to pay a visit. Not to confront her, not yet. I wanted to see how deep this rabbit hole went. Megan's house looked like something out of a magazine, tall glass windows, expensive lawn furniture, everything spotless. But what always struck me was how cold it felt, like money had replaced warmth. She opened the door with that same plastic smile. "Diane! What a surprise! Come in, come in." Her tone was sweet, but her eyes flicked nervously gilt hides in the smallest gestures. "I just came by to see how you were," I said, stepping inside, "and maybe check on that trailer. I've been thinking maybe I do want to keep it." Her smile faltered for half a second before returning. "Oh, well, it's too late now. Cliff already took it to his shop. He said he might restore it, but I told him it's basically scrap metal." I nodded slowly, pretending to accept her lie. "I see. Well, maybe I'll talk to Cliff myself." It meant a lot to Tom. That made her tense up. "Oh, there's no need for that," she said quickly. "I'll handle it." I just smiled. "Oh, Megan, I'm sure you will." I could feel the confusion in her eyes as I turned and walked out calm, collected, but already 10 steps ahead. That night I dug deeper. Cliff Reynolds wasn't hard to find. He ran a small auto repair shop on the edge of town. One quick search on Facebook, and there it was, a photo of him standing beside my trailer. My heart clenched at the sight. The same white and blue stripes. The same license plate. But something caught my attention, the caption. Another project from Megan's recommendation. Excited to restore this baby. "Megan's recommendation," I whispered. So she wasn't just selling it, she was profiting from it. But she'd made one mistake. The registration might have been forged, but the insurance policy was still in my name. That meant I still had a legal claim. And if there was one thing Megan hated more than anything, it was losing control. The next morning, I called Cliff's shop. "Hello, this is Cliff," a gruff voice answered. "Hi, Cliff," I said softly. "This is Diane, Tom's wife. I believe you have our trailer." Silence. Then a cough. Yeah, Megan said you didn't want it anymore." "Oh, she did?" My tone stayed light, polite, but cold. "Funny, because I still have the insurance papers and the title in my name. I'd like to come by and take a look before you do anything to it." There was hesitation, then a sigh. "Look, ma'am, I don't want any trouble. It's still parked out back. You're welcome to come by." I smiled. "Thank you, Cliff. I'll be there tomorrow." As I hung up, I felt a strange calm wash over me, the kind that comes before a storm. The next day, I drove to Cliff's workshop. The place smelled of oil and dust, filled with half-repaired cars and the hum of old machinery. And there it was, my trailer, standing proud and untouched. The sight made my throat tighten. I walked slowly toward it, running my hand along the metal surface. "Hey, old friend," I whispered. "Guess we're not done yet." Cliff came out wiping his hands on a rag. "I didn't know," he said quickly. "Megan said it was hers." "I know," I replied gently. "She tends to say a lot of things." Then I opened the door and stepped inside. The air smelled like memory's old wood, faint perfume, and time. I walked straight to the glove compartment and pulled it open. It was still there. The envelope. Untouched. I exhaled shakily, holding it close. Inside was everything Tom had left for me, including something Megan could never have imagined. A second will. My heart raced as I unfolded the papers. The document was dated just 2 months before Tom died, a will that superseded the previous one. And this one was crystal clear. It stated that if anything were to happen to Tom, the house, the savings, and every personal asset, including the trailer, were solely mine. But it went further. It included a clause. In the event of any interference or claim by relatives, this document serves as evidence of intent, and the property in question shall be protected under Diane's full ownership. I froze. Tom had known. Somehow, he'd known Megan might try something like this. I sank into the old leather seat and whispered, "You always were one step ahead, weren't you, Tom?" That's when I noticed something else inside the envelope, a small USB drive. I didn't know what it contained yet, but I had a feeling it was important. That evening, Megan called me out of nowhere. "Diane," she said in that forced, sweet tone. "I heard you went to Cliff's. You shouldn't have done that." "Why not?" I asked innocently. "Because now he's nervous. You're confusing him. I already told him it was fine." I let the silence stretch until she started getting agitated. Then I said softly, "You really shouldn't have touched Tom's things, Megan." Her voice turned sharp. "Oh, don't start with that sentimental nonsense again. You're just making this harder than it needs to be." I smiled faintly. "You're right, Megan. It's about to get very hard." She hung up on me, and that's when I knew she was scared. The next day, I plugged the USB into my laptop. A folder popped open, one filled with scanned documents, financial statements, and something labeled Megan Records. Curiosity turned into shock. It was a complete record of every unauthorized withdrawal Megan had made from Tom's business account over the years. Dates, amounts, even digital signatures. Tom had known about her lies all along, and he'd saved the proof. I covered my mouth, whispering, "Oh, Tom, you clever man." This wasn't just revenge anymore. It was justice. The plan. I didn't go to the police, not yet. I wanted Megan to see her downfall, not just hear about it. So I printed the documents, sealed them in a plain envelope, and left it in her mailbox with a note. "You might want to look in the glove compartment." Then I waited. It didn't take long. The next evening, I heard tires screeching outside. Megan burst through my front door without knocking, her face pale, eyes wild. "Where did you get that?" she shouted. I leaned back in my chair, calm as a still lake. "From Tom," I said simply. "He always knew what kind of person you were." She froze. For once, she didn't have a clever reply. I watched her crumble, the woman who always thought she could manipulate anyone, finally realizing the game was over. "Megan," I said quietly, "you took my memories. But you also took something you weren't ready for, the truth. And with that, I handed her the envelope, not the one from the glove compartment this time, but another. A letter. I forgive you, Megan, but you'll never touch my family again. She left in silence. And for the first time in years, the house felt peaceful. The morning after Megan stormed out of my house, the world felt strangely quiet. Too quiet. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee, watching sunlight spill through the window. It should have been peaceful. But peace, I'd learned, is never real when you're standing in the middle of a storm pretending it's over. Because deep down, I knew Megan wasn't finished. People like her never admit defeat. They just find new ways to twist the truth. And I was right. By noon, the calls started. First from my neighbor, Carol.Diane. She said hesitantly, I don't know how to tell you this, but Megan's been saying things about you around town. I sighed, already knowing where this was headed. What kind of things, Carol? That you've been unstable since Tom passed. That you're forgetting things. She told folks you were confused about the trailer. I closed my eyes, taking a slow breath. There it was, Megan's favorite trick. When cornered, she didn't fight directly. She poisoned the air instead. Thank you for telling me, Carol, I said softly. Don't worry. The truth has a funny way of finding daylight. After I hung up, I just sat there not angry, not even surprised. Just tired, because I'd seen this before. Megan had always been like this, charming to outsiders, cruel behind closed doors. She didn't destroy people by yelling. She did it with a smile. But this time, she'd underestimated the woman she thought was too broken to fight back. That afternoon, I went to the grocery store, and I could feel the eyes on me. Whispers followed me down the aisle like shadows. She looks fine to me, someone whispered. Maybe Megan's right, another murmured. Grief makes people do strange things. It stung, I won't lie. Being doubted, being pitied was worse than anger. But I didn't let it show. I just smiled, paid for my groceries, and walked out with my head high. Because I had something they didn't. Proof. That evening I went through the files from the USB again. There was something satisfying about reading through those documents, not because of what they said, but because of what they meant. For years, Megan had painted herself as the perfect sister-in-law, the responsible one, the helper, the family savior. But on paper, she was a thief. She'd forged Tom's signature on multiple occasions, transferred small amounts, at first $200 here, $500 there, all marked as business expenses. Over time, it added up to thousands. And the trail was flawless, every date, every transfer, perfectly logged by Tom himself. He hadn't confronted her. He'd documented her. I smiled faintly. You really did see through everyone, didn't you, Tom? Then I found something else, an email chain between Tom and his lawyer, marked confidential. The last email read, If anything happens to me unexpectedly, ensure Diane receives the private safe key in my trailer. She'll understand what to do next. My heart pounded. I'd found the envelope, but not the key. That meant there was still something left, something even more important, and I had a feeling Megan was hiding it. The next morning, I received a call from Mr. Whitaker, Tom's old attorney. He sounded concerned. Diane, I heard there's some dispute about the trailer, he said. Megan contacted my office yesterday. Of course she did. What did she say? I asked, pretending to sound confused. She claimed Tom intended for her to inherit certain assets. She even mentioned a letter, though she didn't produce one. My jaw tightened. That letter doesn't exist. That's what I figured, he replied quietly. Tom never trusted her. In fact, he left something with me in confidence. I was told to give it to you only if Megan started causing trouble. I froze. What is it? He paused. I think it's time you came to my office. When I arrived, Mr. Whitaker handed me a small wooden box. It was heavy, the kind of weight that meant importance. Tom gave this to me 6 months before he passed, he said. He said, if Megan ever tries to play her games, this box will stop her. My fingers trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside was a single brass key, an old photograph of the trailer, and a folded note. The key opens the floor compartment in the trailer. Whatever you find there, use it wisely. It's not about revenge, it's about the truth. I clutched the key, my mind spinning. A secret compartment. In the trailer, Tom had hidden something, and it wasn't just paperwork. That evening, I drove back to Cliff's workshop. The sun was setting, and the sky was painted in streaks of orange and gold. Cliff looked surprised to see me again. "I just need a few minutes with the trailer," I said gently. He nodded and handed me the keys. "Take your time." Inside, everything was as I left it, quiet, still, familiar. I knelt on the wooden floor, running my hand along the edges, feeling for something unusual. And then I found a tiny metal ridge beneath the carpet. The brass key fit perfectly. The panel creaked open, revealing a small metal case wrapped in cloth. My heart raced as I lifted it out. Inside were several stacks of papers, property deeds, receipts, and one thick folder labeled Project Lark. At first, it looked like business documents, but as I skimmed through them, I realized what they really were: records of Tom's company assets that Megan had tried to transfer to her own name. She hadn't just stolen money. She'd tried to take control of his entire small business after his death. And here was the proof. The next morning, Megan showed up again, this time not angry, but smug. She walked into my yard like she owned the place, sunglasses on, her tone falsely cheerful. "Diane," she said, "I think we should talk." I didn't invite her in. About what? She sighed dramatically. "Look, I know you're upset. You've been emotional. But I've decided to let you keep the trailer. Consider it my peace offering." I almost laughed. She wasn't here to make peace, she was trying to control the story. "That's generous of you," I said, folding my arms, "but you can't give me something that was never yours." "Excuse me?" I stepped closer, my voice calm but sharp as glass. "I know what you did, Megan. The fake transfer, the bank withdrawals, the forged signatures. I have every document, every receipt in my possession." Her face turned pale. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" I said softly. "Then maybe you should look in your mailbox again tonight." Her confidence cracked for the first time. She turned on her heel, muttering under her breath, "You'll regret this." As her car sped off, I smiled faintly. "No, Megan," I whispered. "You will." Over the next few days, things started changing. The same people who whispered about me in the grocery store now avoided Megan. The story had turned, and not because I said a word. The documents had spoken for themselves. Someone had leaked the truth, and I didn't need to guess who. Cliff. He'd seen the files when I found the secret compartment, and apparently he'd decided that honesty was better than loyalty to a liar. By the end of the week, everyone knew. Megan hadn't been the caring sister-in-law she claimed to be. She'd been the woman who tried to rob her dead brother's wife. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Megan showed up again. No makeup, no confidence, just tears. She stood on my porch, clutching a small purse. "Diane," she whispered, "please." I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just thought I deserved something too. I studied her face. For the first time, she looked human, small, fragile. "You had everything," I said quietly. "A home, friends, money, but it was never enough, was it?" She shook her head, crying softly. "I'm sorry. I wanted to hate her, but I couldn't, because deep down, I knew forgiveness wasn't for her, it was for me." I took a deep breath and said, "You can leave now, Megan, but don't ever come back." She nodded, turned, and walked away without another word. A few days later, I drove the trailer out to the lake, the place where Tom and I used to camp every summer. The sky was clear, and the air smelled like pine and nostalgia. I parked near the water, sat on the step, and watched the reflection of the sunset ripple across the surface. I could almost hear Tom's laugh again. For the first time since his death, I didn't feel empty. I felt complete, because I finally understood what he meant in that letter. It's not about revenge. It's about the truth. The truth didn't just expose Megan. It reminded me of who I was before the pain. Strong, steady, and unbreakable. And as the stars appeared one by one in the night sky, I whispered, "Thank you, Tom, for everything." Sometimes betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people we trusted most, the ones we never expected to hurt us. But the truth, it always finds a way out. You can lose everything, your peace, your possessions, even your name, but if you hold on to your integrity, you've already won. Because real revenge isn't loud, it's quiet. It's the kind of peace that leaves your enemies haunted by their own reflection. And as for Megan, well, I heard she left town. Maybe she's looking for forgiveness. Maybe she's still running from the truth. Either way, I'm done chasing ghosts. The storm had passed, but the silence it left behind was heavy. For days after Megan's tearful apology, I kept waiting for the phone to ring, for another lie to surface, for some last desperate move from her. But nothing came. The world around me seemed to exhale, finally, after weeks of tension. And yet, deep down, I knew this wasn't finished. People like Megan didn't stop when they were sorry they stopped when they were exposed. And as much as I wanted peace, I also wanted closure. Tom's last message to me. It's not about revenge. It's about the truth echoed in my mind like a riddle. But what if the truth could also be justice? What if the two weren't opposites at all, but the same thing when done right? That's when I began planning. Not for vengeance born out of hate, but for retribution born out of balance. To restore what she had taken, not the trailer, not the money, but my dignity. It started with a visit to the local diner. Small towns are strange ecosystems, news travels faster than Wi-Fi, and reputation is currency. When Megan's lies were exposed, the balance of whispers had shifted again. Now people looked at me with sympathy. "Oh, Diane, we didn't know," they'd say. "Can't believe she did that to family." But pity wasn't what I wanted. Respect was. And the only way to earn that back wasn't by hiding it, was by stepping into the light and showing I'd survived. As I stirred my coffee, Cliff walked in, grease on his hands, a faint smile on his face. "You look better," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "I feel better," I replied. He nodded slowly. "You got that fire again." "I can tell." I smiled faintly. "Good, I'm going to need it." Before anything else, I needed to make sure my evidence was airtight. The documents from Tom's safe compartment were already powerful proof of Megan's theft and her attempts to manipulate his estate. But I wanted to ensure nothing could be twisted or buried. So I made copies. Digital ones, printed ones, even mailed one set to Mr. Whitaker, Tom's lawyer, with a simple note. "Keep safe. Use only if necessary." Then I began cataloging everything, creating a timeline of events, from the first false transfer to the last confrontation. Every signature, every transaction, every message. And as I did, something incredible happened. The act of organizing the chaos became its own kind of therapy. For the first time since Tom's death, I wasn't just reacting to Megan's cruelty, I was directing the story. One thing I'd learned about revenge: the best kind isn't loud. It's quiet, patient, and disguised as grace. So instead of confronting Megan again, I started weaving my own narrative publicly, gently but deliberately. I made a post on the local community board. "After months of legal confusion, my husband Tom's estate has finally been resolved. Thank you to those who believed in me and stood by the truth. Integrity always finds a way to speak louder than lies. No names, no accusations, just truth. But in a town where gossip is oxygen, the small paragraphs spread like wildfire. People filled in the blanks themselves. By the next day, I heard from Carol again. "Megan's furious," she whispered over the phone. "She's saying you're trying to ruin her reputation." I smiled. I didn't say anything untrue. And that was the beauty of it. Megan had built her kingdom on lies. I only had to tell the truth to make it crumble. A week later, Mr. Whitaker called. "Diane, I've reviewed the documents you found in the trailer," he said. "There's enough here to file charges, fraud, forgery, even misappropriation of assets." I hesitated. Do I really want to go that far? He paused. "Tom trusted you to protect what he left behind. That includes justice." His words hit deep. It wasn't just about me, it was about keeping Tom's trust alive. "Do it," I said finally, but quietly. No press, no spectacle. He agreed, and within days the legal wheels began to turn slow, deliberate, unstoppable. Megan was served with notice of investigation. When Megan realized what was happening, she tried to fight back the only way she knew, by pretending she was the victim. She called my phone non-stop, left messages full of tears and rage. "You're destroying me, Diane. Why can't you just let it go?" But I didn't answer, because letting it go was how she'd gotten away with everything before. Instead, I sat in my living room, sipping tea, while the law finally did what emotions never could: hold her accountable. Over the next month, small cracks in her life began to show. Her bank froze her accounts pending investigation. Her friends stopped visiting. Her social media went silent. The woman who once walked through town like a queen was now a ghost. One cold evening, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Megan stood there again, pale, trembling, eyes swollen from crying. "Please," she whispered, "I can't sleep. Everyone hates me. You've won, okay? Just make it stop." I looked at her, really looked. There was no power left in her, just fear, regret, maybe even a touch of self-awareness. "Megan," I said softly, "I never wanted to destroy you. I just wanted you to stop destroying me." She started crying harder. "I was jealous, Diane. You and Tom had everything: love, respect, peace. I had nothing but attention. And it wasn't enough." For a moment I almost pitied her. But then I remembered the months of pain she caused, the lies, the humiliation, the theft. "You had a choice," I said quietly. "And now you're living with it." She nodded slowly, then turned to leave. That was the last time I saw her face to face. A few days later, I returned to the trailer one last time. It sat there at the edge of Cliff's lot, freshly polished, waiting for me. Cliff handed me the keys with a grin. "She's all yours now, officially. Paperwork cleared. No disputes left." "Thank you," I said, taking the keys. "You've been a good friend, Cliff." He shrugged. "Just doing what's right." I stepped inside and sat down on the old bench by the window. Everything smelled like cedar and memory. There, tucked into the corner, I found something I hadn't noticed before: a small envelope under one of the drawers. It was addressed to me, in Tom's handwriting. My heart raced as I unfolded the note. "Diane, if you're reading this, it means you found the truth. I knew Megan would try to take what isn't hers, she always did. But I also knew you'd handle it better than I ever could. You don't need to fight her with anger. Just let her undo herself. And when it's all over, take this trailer to the lake. Sit by the water. And remember that peace isn't the absence of noise, it's the quiet after justice." I smiled through tears. Even in death, Tom had been one step ahead. That weekend, I drove the trailer out to the lake again. The journey felt different this time, not as an escape, but as a return. The road wound through tall pines and golden fields, and for the first time in months, I felt the heaviness lift from my chest. When I parked by the water, I stepped out and looked at the reflection of the setting sun. It shimmered like a promise kept. I sat on the trailer steps, closed my eyes, and whispered, "Tom, it's done. She can't hurt us anymore." And in the silence that followed, I could almost hear him again, that calm, reassuring voice that had always steadied me. In the months that followed, Megan disappeared from town. Some said she moved in with a cousin in another state. Others claimed she sold everything and left quietly. I didn't care to know. What mattered was that I finally had peace, real, earned peace. The trailer became my small sanctuary again, not a symbol of loss but of survival. Every creak of the floor, every worn corner, felt like a story of endurance. I started writing again, something I hadn't done since Tom died. Journals, letters, even small essays about life, forgiveness, and justice. And every now and then, I'd get messages from people who'd heard about what happened. They'd thank me not for exposing Megan, but for showing that it's possible to fight back with grace. One afternoon, months later, Mr. Whitaker called again. "The case has been closed," he said. Megan settled quietly. She returned everything she took and signed an agreement to stay away permanently. I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Revenge had never been my goal. But justice quiet, complete justice had been achieved. After I hung up, I walked out to the porch and watched the sky darken into evening. There was peace in knowing that the story had ended not with a scream, but with a sigh. Revenge is easy, but peace, real peace, takes courage. I didn't win because I destroyed her. I won because I refused to become her. Tom once said, "The truth always outlives the lie." He was right. Megan's lies crumbled, but my truth, our truth, is still standing. Now, when I look at the trailer, I don't see what she took. I see what she gave back, the strength I forgot I had. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. It whispers. And if you listen closely, you'll hear it in the silence that follows. The first morning after everything was finally over, I woke up before sunrise. The air felt different, not heavy with dread or anger anymore, but still. For the first time in what felt like forever, my body didn't tense up expecting bad news. No more calls. No more legal documents. No more tears spilled over things I couldn't control. Just quiet. Just the sound of the lake outside and the hum of the morning wind brushing against the trailer walls. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat by the window, the same one where Tom used to watch the sunrise. The orange light crept slowly across the floor, touching everything softly, as if blessing the space with peace. That was when it hit me the fight was truly over. But peace isn't simple. It's not just silence. It's learning to live again after the storm leaves. I had spent months fighting, defending, proving. Now I had to remember what it meant to be. People think winning means you celebrate. They imagine champagne, laughter, confetti, but the truth, winning sometimes just feels like exhaustion. When Mr. Whitaker told me the case was officially closed, I didn't cry or cheer. I just sat there quietly, trying to feel something. I expected joy. What came instead was emptiness, a strange, quiet ache, because while Megan had lost, I'd lost too time, peace, trust. Even when justice was done, the scars remained. That night I found myself standing in the middle of the trailer staring at the spot where Tom's letter used to sit. I whispered, "We did it, Tom, but it's so quiet now." And in that stillness I realized my next battle wasn't against Megan anymore. It was against the loneliness she left behind. It started small cleaning, fixing, organizing. There's something healing about putting your hands to work. I repainted the trailer, repaired the roof, and planted new flowers outside the porch. Each nail, each brushstroke felt like a declaration. I'm still here. Then I went into town, something I hadn't done comfortably in months. People looked at me differently now. Not with pity, not with judgment, but with respect. "Diane, I heard what happened," said Carol, the cafe owner. "You handled it better than anyone else could have." I smiled softly. I just did what I had to do. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. I'd found strength in a place I didn't know existed, the quiet corners of my heart that refused to break. Small towns remember everything. And though no one spoke Megan's name out loud anymore, the story had traveled. Some people treated me like a hero. Others avoided the topic completely. But I noticed something else. People started coming to me for advice. A young woman once stopped me outside the grocery store. "Miss Diane," she said nervously, "how did you keep calm? When someone you love betrays you?" Her voice cracked on the word betray. I looked at her and saw myself months ago lost, fragile, pretending to be fine. So I told her the truth. "You don't keep calm," I said softly. "You fall apart. You cry, you hate them. But then, one day, you realize it's not about them anymore. It's about you." She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. And I knew then my story wasn't just mine anymore. It was a map for others finding their way through pain. A few weeks later, I received a letter in the mail, no return address. Inside was a short message. "I'm in therapy now. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to be better. Thank you for forcing me to face myself." It was signed, Megan. I stared at the letter for a long time. No anger, no satisfaction. Just a strange peace. Maybe it was genuine. Maybe it wasn't. But either way, it wasn't my burden anymore. I folded it, placed it inside Tom's journal, and whispered, "That chapter's done." Life after betrayal feels like walking through fog, everything familiar, yet different. But slowly, the path clears. One afternoon, as I sat outside the trailer watching the lake shimmer, a thought came to me. What if I shared my story not for pity, but for others who'd lost their voice like I once did? So I started writing, really writing, not just in journals, but structured stories, about love, loss, justice, and healing. It started small, a few posts online under a pen name, but within weeks, strangers were responding. Your words helped me leave a toxic marriage. I thought I was alone, but this gave me hope. Each message felt like a beam of light cutting through the darkness I'd lived in. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a survivor, a storyteller. A few months later, the local library reached out. "We're hosting a women's event," the coordinator said. "Would you consider sharing your story?" I hesitated. Standing in front of a crowd and revisiting the pain publicly felt terrifying. But Tom's words came back to me. The truth always outlives the lie. So I said yes. That night I stood on the small stage, heart pounding, palms trembling. The lights were warm, the audience silent. And then I began not with bitterness, not with anger, but with honesty. "I once believed betrayal was the end of everything," I said softly. But it wasn't. It was the beginning of me rediscovering who I really was. As I spoke, faces in the crowd softened, some nodding, some quietly crying. When I finished, the applause wasn't loud. It was gentle, respectful. The kind that said, "We see you." Afterward, several women approached me, sharing their own stories. And for the first time I realized I wasn't alone. I never had been. The seasons turned. The trees around the lake shifted from green to gold, then white with winter frost. Each season felt like a new layer of healing. One morning, Cliff stopped by again, his old truck rattling up the dirt road. "Place looks beautiful," he said, stepping out. "You've turned this trailer into a home." I smiled. It's funny, isn't it? The same place that once held my pain now holds my peace. He grinned. "That's what resilience looks like." We sat outside, sipping coffee, watching the ducks glide over the water. "Ever thought of selling it?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, this trailer isn't just wood and wheels. It's a story. And I'm not done living it yet." A few months later, one of my online stories caught the attention of a small publishing company. They reached out with an offer to compile my essays into a book, Letters from the Lake. When I held the first printed copy in my hands, I couldn't stop smiling. Tom would have loved this. The woman who once cried over betrayal was now writing about hope, and people were listening. It felt poetic, really. Megan had taken something physical from me, the trailer, the inheritance, the stability. But in return, life had given me something far more valuable, a voice. One spring morning, I took a drive to the edge of town. The sun was warm, the fields alive with color. I stopped by Tom's grave, carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers. Kneeling down, I brushed away the leaves and smiled. "Hey, love," I whispered. We made it through. I told him about the book, about the women I'd met, about how the trailer still stood strong. And though he didn't answer, I felt it, that calm warmth, the silent reassurance he always gave me. As I stood to leave, I noticed a small bird perched nearby a cardinal, bright red against the sky. Tom used to say cardinals were messenger signs that loved ones never really leave. The bird chirped once, then flew toward the lake. I followed it with my eyes, smiling through tears. That evening I sat by the lake again, notebook in hand. The water rippled gently, reflecting the sunset pink, gold, and endless. Forgiveness isn't letting someone off the hook. It's letting yourself move forward without the weight of their wrongs. Justice doesn't always look like punishment. Sometimes it looks like peace. And love, real love, never leaves. It just changes form. I closed the notebook and leaned back, feeling the cool air wrap around me. Everything that had once been broken, my heart, my trust, my world, had found a way to heal. Not perfectly, but beautifully. The trailer lights flickered on, soft and warm. The hum of life returned steady, calm, alive. And for the first time in a long, long time, I was free. They say revenge is sweet. But I've learned something else. Peace is sweeter. Megan took things that could be replaced. What she gave me, though, was priceless, a reason to rebuild, to rise. Sometimes life tears us apart just to show us who we really are. And when we finally put the pieces back together, we realize we were stronger than we ever knew. So if you've ever been broken by betrayal, don't chase the ones who hurt you. Chase the life you deserve instead. A late night in early autumn, I sat by the window of my trailer, the soft glow of my laptop lighting up the room. The lake outside shimmered under the moonlight, and the wind made the trees whisper like they knew I was about to do something that would change everything. I had been writing for months, pages and pages of memories, pain, lessons, and healing. but I had never shared them publicly. Until that night. I titled the post, "The Trailer That Held My Heart and My Revenge." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't angry. It was honest. I wrote about the betrayal, about Tom's memory, about how Megan tried to take everything and how peace, not hatred, became my victory. By the time I hit publish, my hands were trembling. I didn't expect much. Maybe a few kind strangers would read it and move on. But by morning, my story had gone everywhere. At first, it was just a few comments. Wow, this hit hard. I cried reading this. You're so strong. Please tell me this is real. It's too beautiful not to be. Then the numbers grew hundreds, then thousands. My post was shared on local pages, storytelling blogs, even small news outlets. By noon, my inbox was overflowing. Messages poured in from people across the country. Single mothers, widows, betrayed spouses, even daughters who admitted they had once treated their parents like Megan had treated me. You made me see myself. You gave me hope. You reminded me that revenge doesn't have to be cruel, it can be quiet, graceful, and powerful. I sat there, stunned, reading each message slowly, my heart swelling and breaking all at once. For the first time, my pain wasn't just a wound, it was a bridge, a connection. The story I had written to let go of my past was now healing strangers around the world. A week later, there was a knock on my trailer door. When I opened it, a woman stood there with a camera bag slung over her shoulder. Her eyes were kind, but sharp, the kind that missed nothing. "Hi," she said softly. "I'm Rachel. I'm a reporter with Heartland Voices. I read your story. Do you mind if we talk?" At first, I hesitated. I didn't want to become a spectacle. My story wasn't meant for fame. But Rachel's tone was gentle, respectful. "I think your story could help a lot of people who feel trapped," she said. "We can tell it your way, no dramatics, just truth." Something inside me, maybe Tom's courage, maybe my own healing, whispered yes. So, we sat outside by the lake. I made coffee, she turned on her recorder, and I began to talk. Really talk. About love that turned to betrayal. About pain that became power. About the moment I realized revenge doesn't have to destroy, it can rebuild. When we finished, Rachel smiled. "Thank you," she said softly. "People need to hear this kind of strength." The article came out a week later. "The Woman Who Chose Peace Over Payback, A Widow's Quiet Triumph." It was beautifully written, respectful, moving, raw. Within hours, my phone started buzzing nonstop. The piece went viral. Major media outlets picked it up, influencers shared it, and my inbox exploded again. TV networks wanted interviews. Podcast hosts requested appearances. A documentary producer even reached out, saying, "Your story is what humanity needs right now." It was surreal. One day, I was just a woman with a broken heart and an old trailer. The next, I was being called The Woman Who Redefined Revenge. I laughed at that title the first time I saw it. If only they knew how many nights I'd cried myself to sleep, doubting everything. But now, people were finding strength in my story, and that made it worth it. Of course, not everyone was kind. The internet has two faces, one of love and one of cruelty. Some accused me of making it all up. Others said I should have fought harder or taken her to court again. At first, their words stung. But then, I remembered what I'd written in my journal weeks earlier. Peace doesn't mean everyone agrees with your choices. It means you stop needing their approval. Still, there was one person whose reaction I hadn't anticipated: Megan's. One evening, as I was making tea, I got a message request. It was from her. The first line made my heart stop. "I saw your story." I hesitated to open the rest. But I did. At first, I was angry. I thought you were trying to ruin me. But then I read it again, and I realized you didn't lie about anything. You just told the truth. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I'm changing. I'm trying. And your story helped me see myself clearly for the first time. There were no excuses, no manipulations, just honesty. For a long time, I sat there staring at the message. Then, for the first time in years, I smiled, thinking of her not with bitterness, but with compassion. Maybe Tom was right all along. The truth really does outlive the lie. A month later, I received another email, this one from a national talk show. They wanted me to appear on their Everyday Heroes segment. At first, I laughed out loud. Me, a hero? I was just a woman who learned how to survive betrayal without losing herself. But Rachel, the journalist who had first interviewed me, called soon after. "You should do it," she urged. "This isn't just about you anymore. You've become a voice for people who never got to speak their truth." I thought about it for days. Finally, I said yes. The studio was colder than I expected. Bright lights, cameras, people whispering into headsets, it all felt surreal. Before the show started, the host, a warm, kind man named Daniel, came to greet me. "Diane, your story moved me deeply," he said. "Just speak from the heart, like you did in your post." When the cameras rolled, Daniel asked softly, "Diane, what gave you the strength to stay calm instead of seeking revenge?" I took a breath. The audience waited. "Because revenge doesn't fix betrayal," I said slowly. "It only extends it. I didn't want to live in bitterness. I wanted to build something better. And that's what I did." There was silence, then gentle applause. Daniel smiled. "You've inspired millions of people to rethink what strength really looks like." And for the first time, I believed it too. Becoming the voice of quiet strength. After the show aired, everything changed again. I started getting invitations to speak at women's conferences, to collaborate on podcasts, to write more. But through it all, I stayed grounded. I still lived in my trailer by the lake, still woke up early to drink coffee and watch the sunrise. Because fame wasn't the point, healing was. Every time I spoke, I reminded people, you don't need to shout your pain to make it real. Sometimes your quietest moments become your loudest victories. And that line, that single sentence, started trending everywhere. People began calling it the Diane Principle. Months later, I was invited to speak at a university event about resilience and forgiveness. As I stood backstage looking at the crowd, hundreds of students, I felt nervous again. But then I spotted something that made me catch my breath. In the second row, sitting quietly, was Megan. Our eyes met. She didn't smile, didn't wave, but she nodded. A small, honest nod. I smiled back, tears blurring my vision. When it was my turn to speak, I said something I hadn't planned to. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most end up being the reason we grow the most. I don't hate anyone in my story. I just thank them because without the pain, I never would have found my strength. The room went silent, then erupted in applause. After the event, Megan quietly approached me. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" I asked. "For not destroying me when you had every reason to." And with that, she walked away. No dramatic reconciliation, no tears, just closure. The kind that doesn't need words. When I returned home that night, I stood by the lake again, the same place where my story began. The reflection of the moon shimmered across the water, calm and endless. I whispered, "Tom, I think we did it." Because somehow, through betrayal, heartbreak, and chaos, I had found my peace. Not by fighting fire with fire, but by letting truth burn on its own. Sometimes, life doesn't give us the apologies we deserve, but it gives us the peace we never thought we'd find. My story went viral, but that wasn't the victory. The real win was looking in the mirror and finally liking the person staring back. They say revenge is living well. I say it's living free. And maybe, just maybe, that's what Tom wanted for me all along. Peace, it's a fragile thing. After months of healing and rebuilding, my days finally felt light again. I woke up with the sunrise, brewed my coffee, and watched the golden light dance on the lake's surface. I tended to my small garden. I even started writing a little book not about revenge, but about forgiveness. I had learned to breathe again, to smile without forcing it. My story had inspired thousands online, and for the first time in years, my heart was still. But peace never lasts forever, does it? It was a Thursday evening when I got the call that would test everything I thought I'd healed. The phone rang just as I was about to make dinner. "Hello?" I answered, half distracted, stirring a pot of soup. "Mrs. Walker?" a polite male voice asked. "Yes, speaking. This is Officer Daniels from Brookville County Police. I'm calling about your daughter, Megan." My hand froze midair. I hadn't heard her name spoken by someone else in months. My chest tightened. What happened? I asked, my voice trembling. "She's fine now," he said quickly, "but she was involved in a car accident earlier this afternoon. She's been taken to St. Helena's Hospital." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. My first instinct, the mother in me, was to drop everything and run. But then the memories flooded back. The betrayal, the lies, the look in her eyes when she told me she wished I'd just disappeared. Still, she was my daughter. I whispered, "I'll be there." The road to the hospital felt endless. Every mile took me deeper into memories I thought I'd buried. The last time I'd driven this route, Megan had been the one behind the wheel, laughing, carefree, before everything between us fell apart. Now, it was just me and the echo of what used to be. When I reached the hospital, the smell of antiseptic hit me sharp and cold. A nurse guided me to her room. I paused outside the door, took a deep breath, and pushed it open. Megan lay on the bed, her arm in a cast, a few bruises across her face. Her eyes were closed, her breathing steady. She looked small, fragile. Nothing like the proud, defiant woman I'd last seen years ago. I stood there frozen, unsure what to feel. Anger? Pity? Fear? Then her eyes fluttered open. When she saw me, she gasped softly. "Mom!" Her voice was weak, unsure. I didn't move. I couldn't. Tears welled up in her eyes. "You came." I swallowed hard. Of course I did. "You're my daughter." Those words, simple but heavy, filled the space between us like a bridge slowly rebuilding itself. For a long time we sat in silence. The machines beeped softly in the background, the world outside continuing as if nothing had changed. Finally, Megan spoke. "I don't deserve this," she whispered. "After what I did to you, after everything," I shook my head. "You don't have to deserve it. That's not how love works." She looked away, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I was so angry, Mom. After Dad died, I wanted someone to blame. You were there, and when you didn't give me what I wanted, I convinced myself you didn't care." Her voice broke, but I see it now. I see how wrong I was. I felt my own tears rise. The years of silence, the pain, the betrayal, all of it melted into that one fragile moment of truth. I reached out, hesitated, then took her hand. "It's never too late to come home," I said softly. She squeezed my hand like she'd been waiting her whole life to hear that. The next day, Megan was discharged, and I offered to take her to my trailer by the lake to rest for a few days. At first, she protested. "You don't have to do this." But I insisted. Maybe we both need this. The drive was quiet. No music, no small talk, just the hum of the engine and the weight of unspoken words. When we arrived, Megan stared at the trailer, her eyes softening. "This is where you live now?" she asked. "Yes," I said, smiling faintly. "It's small, but it's peaceful." She nodded. "It's beautiful, actually." That night we sat outside by the fire pit. Crickets chirped, the lake shimmered, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. Megan turned to me, her face illuminated by the soft firelight. "Mom, I'm sorry," she said quietly, "for everything. For taking Dad's things. For treating you like you didn't matter. For being so blind." Her voice broke. "You didn't deserve any of it." I listened, tears running down my cheeks. I'd imagined this apology 1,000 times, angry, bitter, dramatic. But this one was quiet. Real. The kind of apology that came from a heart finally humbled. "I forgive you," I whispered. Megan looked at me, stunned. "Just like that?" "Yes," I said, smiling through tears. "Just like that. Because holding on would only hurt us both." She broke down, sobbing, years of guilt pouring out. I wrapped my arms around her, and for the first time since Tom's funeral, I felt like a mother again. Over the next few days, Megan and I talked for hours. About Dad, about the past, about the lies she told herself to justify what she did. She told me she'd been struggling, that after the story went viral, people recognized her. She lost her job, friends drifted away, and the guilt consumed her. "I wanted to call you so many times," she admitted, "but I didn't think you'd ever forgive me." I smiled softly. Sometimes forgiveness is waiting for you long before you're ready to accept it. Word spread quickly that Megan was back in town. Some people whispered, others stared, but I didn't care. For once, I wasn't living for their opinions. We even went to the small diner where Tom and I used to eat breakfast every Sunday. The waitress, an old friend, smiled at us kindly. "It's good to see you two together again," she said. It was simple, but it meant everything. A week later, a familiar car pulled up outside my trailer. It was Rachel, the journalist, who had first told my story. She stepped out, smiling. "Diane, I heard you've got company." Megan looked nervous, but Rachel approached her warmly. "You're the daughter, right? I'm glad you're here. Your mom's story helped so many people." Megan nodded shyly. "Yeah, I've read it. 100 times." Rachel chuckled. "Then you already know she made Peace the hero." We all sat by the lake again, the same place where Rachel had interviewed me months ago. But this time, the story felt different. Rachel asked gently, "Would you both be open to sharing this new chapter? Together?" Megan looked at me unsure. I smiled, "Only if it feels right." After a pause, she nodded. "Let's do it. Maybe someone else out there needs to know forgiveness is possible." 2 weeks later, a follow-up article was published, Mother and Daughter, The Second Chance. It wasn't about revenge this time, it was about redemption. About how pain doesn't have to be the ending. About how forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it gives the future a chance to breathe. The article went viral again, maybe even more than the first one. People called it the sequel no one expected. Emails flooded in once more. This time, not just from strangers, but from parents and children who hadn't spoken in years. They were reconnecting, healing, forgiving. One message read, "I sent your story to my mom after 10 years of silence. We talked for the first time today. Thank you, Diane. You changed our lives." During a live interview following the second article, a host asked me something I'll never forget. "Diane, you've lived through betrayal, pain, and forgiveness. What do you think revenge really means now?" I paused, looked straight at the camera and said, "Revenge isn't about destroying others. It's about refusing to let their actions destroy you." The audience went silent, then applauded softly. That line spread across social media, again thousands of people quoting it, printing it, even tattooing it. But to me, it was just the truth I'd lived. Months later, Megan decided to move to a nearby town to start over. She got a new job, made amends with old friends, and began volunteering at a shelter for women rebuilding their lives. Before she left, she came to see me one last time. She hugged me tightly. "I'll visit every weekend, I promise." I smiled. "Go live your life, sweetheart. That's the best gift you can give me." As her car disappeared down the road, I felt a strange mix of sadness and peace. Because this time she wasn't leaving out of anger, she was leaving to begin again. That night, I sat by the lake with a candle burning beside me, one for Tom, one for forgiveness, one for the woman I used to be. The wind rustled softly, and for the first time, I didn't feel haunted by my past. I felt guided by it. I opened my notebook and wrote the final lines for my book. Revenge gave me focus. Forgiveness gave me freedom, and love gave me peace. I closed the notebook, smiled, and whispered, "Thank you, Tom, for everything." The water shimmered, and for a fleeting moment I could almost feel him there, proud, at peace, and watching over both of us. When the past came knocking again, I realized healing isn't a destination. It's a choice you make every single day. My daughter didn't just come home. She brought closure with her. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means finally being free, and that's the real ending to my story. The morning after Megan left for her new life, the house, or rather, my small trailer by the lake, felt both silent and alive. I woke up before dawn, brewed my usual cup of coffee, and stepped outside. The air was cool, crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine and fresh earth. The sky was painted in pink and gold streaks, the kind of sunrise that humbles you into silence. It had been years since I'd felt that kind of peace, not the empty quiet that comes after heartbreak, but the kind that fills your chest with gratitude. As I stood there, mug in hand, I thought about everything that had brought me to this moment. The lies, the betrayal, the silence, the long nights of crying alone, and finally the peace that came not from payback, but from letting go. That morning, I opened the drawer of my small wooden desk and pulled out an envelope I'd been keeping hidden for years. It was the letter I'd written to Megan when I thought I'd never speak to her again. It began with anger, turned into pain, and ended with love, the kind of love only a mother could have, unconditional and patient even through the worst betrayals. I never sent it, but now, as I unfolded the yellowed paper, I read it again, every shaky word, every sentence that once hurt to write. My sweet girl, if you ever read this, I want you to know I never hated you. I just missed you. I missed the version of you who used to sit beside me at the lake and tell me her dreams. I missed the laughter we shared before grief turned us into strangers. You broke my heart, but you also reminded me that love doesn't end where pain begins. It changes shape, but it never dies. Tears fell onto the paper, but this time they weren't bitter, they were cleansing. I folded the letter, smiled softly, and burned it in a small dish. The ashes swirled up into the air, disappearing with the wind. And with that, the last weight of my past drifted away too. Later that week, Rachel, the journalist who had told both my stories, stopped by again. She brought a bouquet of lilies and a warm smile. "Thought you could use some company," she said, stepping inside. I poured her coffee, and we sat at the kitchen table, two women bound by a story that had touched the world. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "You didn't just share your pain, you gave people hope. Do you know how many messages I still get from your story?" I shook my head. Rachel smiled. "Thousands, Diane. You changed lives. People are mending families, letting go of grudges, forgiving. You made forgiveness powerful." Her words caught me off guard. I'd spent so long feeling powerless, unseen, forgotten. To know that my pain had built bridges for others, that was a kind of justice I'd never expected. After Rachel left, I sat by the lake again. The wind rippled across the water's surface, creating little circles that expanded outward one after another. That's what forgiveness does, I thought. It starts small, a decision deep within you, but it spreads. It touches others. It changes things in ways you may never see. People think revenge means winning, but what I learned was this. Revenge might satisfy the ego, but forgiveness heals the soul. When you stop trying to hurt the person who hurt you, you reclaim your power. Because suddenly their choices don't define your peace anymore. A few days later, a young woman knocked on my door. She looked nervous, clutching a small notebook. "Hi, Mrs. Walker. I hope it's okay, I came. My name's Emily, I'm from town." I invited her in, and over tea, she told me her story about how she'd seen my first interview online. Her mother had left when she was 16. She'd hated her for it. But after hearing my story, she decided to reach out again. She replied, "Mrs. Walker," Emily said, tears in her eyes. "We're meeting next week. I just wanted to thank you, because your story gave me the courage." I reached across the table and took her hand. "You don't owe me thanks, sweetheart," I said gently. "You gave yourself the courage. You just needed a reminder that love is stronger than anger." She hugged me before leaving, whispering, "You saved me." As I watched her walk away, I realized this was my true calling now. Not revenge, not bitterness, but showing others that even after betrayal, life still blooms again. A month later, I received a letter in the mail. The handwriting was unmistakable Megan's. Inside, there was a photo of her in front of a small house, smiling, holding a puppy. "Mom, I finally got a place of my own. It's small, but it feels like home. I named the puppy Grace because that's what you gave me. I'm volunteering at the shelter 3 times a week, and guess what? They're letting me run a support group for women starting over. Sometimes I still cry when I think about everything I did, but when I do, I remember your face that night in the hospital, calm, forgiving, full of love. I want to be that kind of woman, too. I love you, Mom. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave up on you." Tears blurred my vision as I finished reading. I pressed the letter to my chest and whispered, "I love you too, baby." It was strange for years. I'd thought my story ended in betrayal. But now I understood. It ended in redemption. On a quiet Sunday, I drove to the cemetery where Tom was buried. It had been months since my last visit. I brought fresh flowers and the small wooden cross Megan had carved for him when she was a little girl. Kneeling by the gravestone, I whispered softly, "You'd be proud of her, Tom. She's finally becoming the woman we always knew she could be." The wind rustled the leaves, and I smiled somehow. I felt like he heard me. I sat there for a while, just thinking about the years I wasted trying to understand why people hurt those who loved them. About how, in the end, forgiveness had given me everything revenge couldn't: peace, clarity, strength. Before leaving, I placed one of the lilies from Rachel's bouquet on his grave. "Rest easy, love," I whispered. "We're okay now." When I got home, I recorded a short message for Rachel's online series, something she'd asked me to do months ago, but I hadn't felt ready until now. I sat by the window, the sunset glowing behind me, and spoke directly into the camera. To anyone listening, I know what betrayal feels like. I know the ache that keeps you up at night, replaying every word, every lie. You think revenge will heal you. You think exposing them, proving them wrong, will make the pain stop. But it doesn't. Not really. Revenge may quiet the noise for a moment, but forgiveness silences it forever. 'Cause forgiveness isn't about saying what they did was okay. It's about saying you're done carrying it. Let them live with their choices. You live with peace. When I finished, I turned off the camera and sat back, breathing deeply. The message felt like the final page of my life's chapter, complete, whole, ready to be shared with the world. A week later, the video went live. Within hours, it had millions of views. The comments section overflowed with people writing things like, "I watched this while crying. Thank you for helping me forgive. She turned pain into poetry. This woman is living proof that forgiveness is strength." I read every comment, my heart full, not with pride, but with gratitude, because this wasn't just my story anymore. It belonged to everyone who'd ever been broken, betrayed, or left behind and chose to rise anyway. That evening, I sat by the lake again, my favorite spot, the place where everything began and ended. The sky was streaked with orange and purple. The reflection of the water shimmered like glass. Grace, Megan's little puppy, sat beside me. Yes, Megan had brought her over last weekend, insisting I keep her for company. I looked down at her and chuckled. Looks like I'm not alone after all. A breeze rippled through the trees, soft and comforting. I whispered into the wind. It's done. The story's finally done. For once, I didn't feel like a victim or even a survivor. I felt free. Sometimes life breaks you so deeply that you think you'll never find your way back. But one day, the tears dry, the wounds heal, and you realize you're stronger because of it. They may have betrayed you, lied to you, or left you, but they didn't win, because you're still standing. Forgiveness isn't a gift to them. It's freedom for you. So, to everyone watching this, stop waiting for closure from the ones who hurt you. You are the closure. And remember, the sweetest revenge isn't payback, it's peace. If Diane's story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and tap the bell icon, because every week we share true stories of love, betrayal, and redemption that remind you, life may break you, but it can also remake you. This was Diane's story, but it could be any of ours, because sometimes the only way to win is to forgive. Fade out with soft piano music, the sound of wind over the lake, and the image of the sunset turning into night.